Hey y'all, welcome back to the Insurance Lounge. I'm Tanya,
And I'm Kristy.
and we are your local agents out in Chattanooga, Tennessee. Our goal is to make insurance a little less boring and way more useful. We want to share with you what we know so that you feel more confident about how you can better protect your family, your home, your business, and certainly your financial future. Now, with that said, Christy, would you mind kicking us off with the topic of this week?
Sure, Tanya. Thanks a lot.
Mhm.
And welcome back to the Insurance Lounge, everybody. It's great to be here with you again this week. And we want to talk to you this week about liability insurance, right? So,
Ooh.
what is it? How do I select it? What's required versus recommended? All those big, big questions, right, Tanya?
Yes, ma'am. So let's dive into the good stuff because I think this is going to be very helpful for a lot of folks out there. Um,
I talk
as
to so many people every day who are like, now I know I should know this, but I don't really know this. Tell me what this means, and it's okay. And not everybody's insurance agent.
exactly, and you know what? That's why you have insurance agent, right?
That's
To help
right.
you. So, Christy, let's start with the basic, right? What is liability insurance, anyways?
Yep. What is liability? If you just like go to Webster, right? It's something that you owe or are responsible for. So that in the case of insurance, it could be due to your negligence at home, with the situation, on your property. In an auto, obviously, it's you're at fault in an accident, and so you're now responsible for damages to somebody else, their property, their health, and so on.
Absolutely, guys. And the reason why it is so important is because liability actually pays to the other person that you're
Right.
responsible for. So, like that at fault accident that Christy mentioned, that amount is going to pay to the other party, the other people in the other car, right? Or if like a situation happened at your home, if your guest or non-guest slip and fall on your property,
Hmm.
you will be held responsible for that as a homeowner.
Right.
So, what most people don't realize, Christy, is that the insurance policy will only pay to the other person up to whatever limits you have selected on your
Right.
policy. Okay.
Right.
Now, most people don't realize that if the damages that we're responsible for go over that amount, we're going to be responsible to pay out of pocket.
Personally responsible, that's right, yeah. So
That's
that's
right,
why people
Christy.
ask that question, right? How much do I need?
Exactly. And now, Christy, what if that amount that I'm responsible to pay out of pocket is so large, right? And we're
Mhm,
going to dive a
mhm.
little more into that. Um, what's going to happen to me?
Bad things, Tanya.
Oh no,
Bad
that's not what I want
things.
to hear.
I know, right? But you're at risk. Your ability to earn an income is at risk because your wages can be garnished, excuse me. Your assets, anything that you've saved, personally saved is at risk because someone can sue you and try to get all of that. Any equity that you have built up in your home. If your car is paid for, that's an asset that you have that you need to be able to protect.
Absolutely, guys. And, in the case where we are held responsible for someone's injury or property damage, um, there in most states, people can essentially sue us for everything, right? So not only liability can pay for their medical injury if they miss work and did not
Right.
get paid, or if they decide to hire a lawyer to sue
Right.
me, right?
Mhm.
All of that is covered under, your liability. Now, you know, people can also sue us for emotional damage or
Pain
pain
and
and
suffering,
suffering.
right? Yeah.
So, that's how these, liability lawsuit can rack up really, really fast.
Yeah. Well, think about it, Tanya. If I mean, and nobody's just running around here willy-nilly trying to hurt somebody, right? But accidents happen. They do happen. So if you are at fault and you hurt someone in an accident and they have to spend even one night in a hospital, right off the bat, you're probably talking about 15, $16,000, right? So it's going to add up really quick.
Exactly, guys. And this is why, even though in your state, legally to drive, only have to have liability and you only have to have state minimum. So do check with your state what that minimum is. But a lot of time, and Christy would agree with me on this, a lot of time the minimum requirement is so minimal. That's why they call
So low.
minimum for a
It's so
reason,
low.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
For example, in Tennessee, it's only 25,000.
Yeah.
So, with Christy's example, 25,000 isn't going to go very far if that person had to spend maybe 2 or 3 nights in the hospital.
Hmm.
Maybe there was another passenger in that
If they
car with that
right, if they
person.
have to, if they have to have any kind of diagnostic test to determine the extent of an injury, it's $10,000. It
Usually.
just is not going to go very far at all in a minimum situation. So you really need to take a look at what it is that you have accumulated. You work hard and you're doing the right thing, saving your money. You want to protect those assets that you've accumulated, as well as your ability to keep doing that in the future, right? Because we talked about garnishing wages. So um, they can garnish your wages for, I think you said, Tanya, and this was news to me, actually, up to 10 years.
Up to
That's
10
a
years
long time.
and up to 25% of your after tax income. So, whatever you take home or you and your spouse take home, that's definitely at risk every time you pull out of the driveway and drive to work or drive to the
Mhm.
store or drive to
Mhm.
your kid's soccer game, right?
Yeah.
So that's why liability is super important. And now, when you sit down and do some napkin math and figure out how much assets you had accumulated over time or how much you have now, we recommend that the good rule of thumb is to select the amount of liability limits that would at least cover the total value of what you have now.
Right.
That's our rule of thumb that we want to go by. Now,
Yep.
Christy, um, even if I have, let's say, $100,000 in asset, do I have to pick $100,000 in liability?
Everybody's got a budget to manage too, right? So that's the choice that you have to make. Obviously, the higher the level of liability insurance that you have, the more that's going to cost. Um, you can do things to keep that lower by doing things like protecting your credit and things like that we've talked about in other episodes.
Mhm.
But um, you just have to decide at the end of the day, how comfortable are you with being at risk if you're not going to choose a limit that does cover those assets that you've accumulated.
Exactly. Now, another tip that we have for you is if you do that math and you figure out, oh my gosh, Christy, I am worth over a
Who
$500,000.
knew?
Woohoo! So what do we do in those cases, when we have a larger amount of asset at risk?
Yeah. I
And
recommend for anybody who has over 500,000 in accumulated assets to also at least consider, um, acquiring what we would call an umbrella policy. And, Tanya, I know you know this, but for those listening, think about the umbrella as literally it's like that umbrella. It's going to cover both your auto and your homeowner's liabilities, those risks, and provide coverage over and above the limits that you've selected in either of those policies. So it really does provide an added layer of protection against your liability.
amazing. And then the other scenario that we recommend that you might want to consider a personal umbrella policy too is if you have other risk exposures that maybe somebody else might not have. So, for example, if you have a swimming pool
Oh, yeah.
in at your
Mhm.
home, there's a higher risk of somebody might get hurt in
Yep.
your pool. And anytime, guys, anyone get hurt on your property and your name is on the deed, you are automatically responsible for that.
Right. And I mean, you think about it, Tanya, and you think, well, my friends aren't going to sue me or what, what have you. But if the damages, are bad, people get forced into making decisions about, being
Absolutely.
able to protect themselves. So you can't assume that you're not going to be at risk because you only surround yourself with good people and what have you. There's risk everywhere, and I mean, hate to be that, doomsayer, but that's what we're here for, is to help you protect that.
Absolutely. Another scenario where you might want to consider higher liability limits or even the umbrella is when you have young drivers
Young
in your
driver, I
house.
was going to say it. Yep, I've
And
got
now,
one that's
why?
going to be hitting the road in a few months.
Yes. Now, why should we consider that, Christy? Like, why is that a risk factor that we
Yep.
really have to consider, updating our liability limits?
Yeah. So, I bought my agency from my dad, and a saying that I picked up from him. He used to tell people, when you put your young driver in the car, just throw everything you own in the trunk and they're carrying it around with them, right? Because they may be the most responsible kid in the world, but they don't have the experience. They don't have the judgment that you have as an experienced driver. So the likelihood of them having an accident is higher, just automatically, it's higher than an experienced driver. And your name is on everything that kid has put at risk at that point.
Absolutely. So, whenever there are changes like that, guys, you're getting a job promotion, a pay raise,
Yeah.
you acquire your home, you pay off your home,
Pay
you
it
buy a
off. Yeah.
second home, you bought an investment home, you have a couple young drivers on your policy. When there are times like that, make sure you take a look at your policy, make sure you know exactly how much liability limits you have, and then talk to your agent
Yep.
and see if this is something that you need to do an upgrade on, or need to redo the math and see if you need an umbrella policy or not.
Yep, yep.
So
It's like I said, that we know that everybody has to balance the budget, for their household. No matter how much wealth you have accumulated in your household, you still have a budget. So, um, but it's at least better to know what the options are and whether it is affordable, maybe to cover an additional amount of risk that helps protect your peace of mind, as well as, all these things that we've been talking about, your ability to earn an income, the assets that you've accumulated.
exactly. And for a lot of companies out there, not all insurance company, but for many, many insurance company, Christy, I'm sure you noticed this, the difference between choosing the state minimum or choosing the right higher liability, the right amount that fits my needs better,
Hmm.
that difference could be as little as $5 a month, $10 a month, right,
Right. It's
Christy?
sometimes not very high at all. Exactly. You might be surprised.
Absolutely. So if you don't have an awesome agent like me and Christy, then feel free to give us a
Give us a
call.
call.
We'll drop our link on how you can message us or how you can get in touch with us. But yes, guys, you guys work hard for what you have. You want to make sure it's protected, or at a minimum, you have higher limits than the minimum, so that you don't have to go through that anxiety and that worry if you were to find yourself in a situation like an at-fault accident, or somebody got hurt on your property, or you accidentally hurt someone out hunting or fishing or
Sure.
golfing
Yeah.
or playing basketball on the
Yeah.
court, right? I mean, that's
Yeah.
accident can happen at any time, guys. Just make sure that you're well protected so that you get to enjoy what you do, you get to enjoy the fruit of your labor, and then not get caught up in unfortunate situations. With that said, Christy, we talk a lot about liability today. Just to summarize it for our listener, what is your biggest takeaway when it comes to liability based on all this, all the years of experience that you have working with customers?
Yeah. I think the biggest thing that I like to educate people on and that I hope folks take away today is just covering the state minimum, does not cover your risk. It does not cover your assets. Yes, you've satisfied the requirements of the law, but you may still be, at risk for losing the things that you've worked so hard to accumulate. So have that conversation and decide, what that amount is that you want to select in your policy.
Yes, absolutely. And if you need help with that, you know where to find us. And until next time, bye.
Peace out.